Nano Banana Pro just dropped, and I wanted to see whether it's actually useful for interior designers and architects, not just for making cool posters or random test images. So I ran it through 2 real design workflows that I use all the time. If you're new here, I'm Joanne. I'm an interior designer and interior design business coach, and I help interior designers and architects streamline their workflows using skills, systems, and strategies with a lot of AI mixed in. So let me take you through 2 real design workflows I use all the time, transforming empty spaces into concept visuals and updating SketchUp renders for client presentations. Let me show you exactly what I tested, what works, and where it still struggles. So you can access Nano Banana Pro on the Gemini app. So just make sure that you're in the thinking model, and you can then create an image, or you can choose it from this drop down tools here where it says create images. You might also get this bar here which tells you that you can try it. You can also access it on external apps like Higgsfield. You just have to choose the model Nano Banana Pro. So the first test was a Parisian style loft. I started with a completely empty raw industrial shell. This was an image I found on Pinterest. It has concrete floors, peeling paint, and hard midday light. So the question was, can I turn this into something that actually looks like a finished interior direction that I could show a client? To test that, I uploaded the original space and gave it a very specific prompt. It had wide plank flooring, Parisian wall paneling, soft golden hour light, and an overall vibe of a modern Parisian apartment. But I wanted it to retain the character of the original space. As always, you can find the images and the full prompt in my free community, the Design Success Circle. In it, you'll find full courses on AI as well as other courses for designers. I update it every week so you can be sure to find the latest models and information. So let's get back to my Parisian style loft. What I'm testing here was whether the model respected the architecture, whether it understood material placement, and whether it could shift lighting without breaking the room. I did have to experiment quite a bit, so let's take a look. So I first uploaded this image of an empty room that I found on Pinterest, and then I also found another inspiration image where you can see that there is some original detailing, some very brightly colored objects, and I wanted it really to have this vibe. So my prompt, and obviously you can see the full prompts in my free community, was relatively detailed, but the result I received was not actually what I wanted. You can see it's changed the architecture. So again, this is where you may have to try a couple of different times. So then I did it again. I uploaded the shell again, and I asked it to keep the original architecture, the raw textures, and then instead of giving the image, I just described what I wanted. And you can see one of the things to note is it does actually show the thinking behind it. So in the end, the result was much better. So you can see it's maintained the original architecture. The windows, the doors are in the correct place. The next thing I wanted to do was to see whether to do something simple like add in an image. So I chose this image of a rug here. And one thing to note, you can add up to 8 images. So you could make this actually quite complicated. If you had an empty room, you could say have 8 pieces of furniture or so on, and then add it into that room. So you can see here it created that rug flawlessly. And then I decided that the scale of the chair, if you look at the chair compared to this sideboard, was too small. So I asked it to adjust the scale, and it was able to do that. And I also asked it to change it to black. Again, the prompts are going to be in the community so you can see what I've changed. I then have this image of a chandelier, and I didn't specifically ask it to turn the lights on and off, but you can see here it's left the lights on and the lighting has remained the same. I then decided that I would show a couple of chandelier options. So again, I gave the chandelier, and you can see the result. Again, it looks exactly the same except for the chandelier. Then I asked it to change the time of day to the golden hour, and I think it's done this pretty well. I like the lighting. I like even the reflections on the ceilings and along the floor. I think it looks pretty realistic. So then I asked it to give me a nighttime image, and this is where I started to come into a few issues. You can see it's dark outside, yet you've got these very, very strong shadows. So in essence, I went backwards and forwards, and I could not get it to adjust the shadows to my specifications. I think this is better, but I don't think it's realistic. So I went backwards and forwards, and then in the end, what I did was ask it to basically switch all the lights off and soften the harsh shadows, and this is what I got. And again, I think this is a pretty nice example of what it can give you. And then I tried it again, and it just wouldn't do it. I thought one of the problems could be the fact that it was remembering what I'd asked it in the previous chats. So I started a new chat and asked it again. And again, I still got sort of very similar results. So again, I could probably persist and keep on working with this. And you can see that there's a few more little changes. There's these lamps that have appeared and so on that were, I don't think that they were in the original image. You can see that those lamps weren't in the original image. So again, you can just double check that things don't appear. You can see that they are here, but they are not here. And that's not to say that they don't make a pleasing image. You just have to be aware that sometimes Gemini can just add things into your image that maybe you're not expecting. And again, I'm not sure that I love the scale of these lamps, but in the end, you can see that at some point these lamps have been added in. And as you can see, the end result was usable. It kept the proportions of the room. It didn't invent weird geometry. It added flooring consistently. It applied paneling in the right places. I could play around with the golden hour lighting, with shadows falling across the floor in a believable way. So what impressed me most, that it stayed very close to the reference image that I uploaded. And that's something older models really struggled with. But is it perfect? It's probably not, but it's heading in the right detail. Nano Banana still occasionally blurs details or softens edges, and it requires me to do rounds of prompts. But as a first round concept visual, this result is absolutely workable. This would normally take me hours of V-Ray and Photoshop. So this end result took around 30 minutes to experiment with and get to a point that I think I could show it to a client. Next, I wanted to test something directly from my design workflow. So I took this raw SketchUp elevation from a project that I'm currently designing. This is the home gym. And the question was, can Nano Banana Pro take this flat, unfinished render and turn it into a realistic concept version with upgraded materials? So here I have a project that I'm doing, which is a garage that's being turned into a gym as part of a larger project. So here's my SketchUp model. I've got some existing equipment that the client already has, and I want a mirrored wall. This is a door that goes into another room. I've shown this door open, so the original model, when I rendered it, showed this as a blank space. So you might want to play around with that model, and there's some placeholder joinery in there. I also uploaded this image of a existing gym, and what I like about it is the plywood materials and the warm tones. So I asked it to transform this warm tone here. And you can see it's basically just taken the image and used the existing material in that image. So what I then decided to do is then I said transform. I gave it the same image, and then I gave it a detailed prompt. So I guess the point that I'm saying is when you actually are adding inspiration images, it seems to take that image quite literally, and so it will change your model. So what I would first of all start is, if you have an inspiration image, use ChatGPT to describe that image and then add it into your prompt rather than upload an image. That seems to just take priority in terms of the design, and I hope that makes sense. So you can see here, this is much more what I wanted it to show. You can see it's taken kind of those warm tones. You see that problem with my model where I had the door that was open and it's just kind of filled it in, so it doesn't quite make sense. I'd been shown that if you clicked on the image, you could actually make drawings, but I just couldn't get it to work. So I don't know why that works. So I asked Gemini whether it could help me, and it basically said, you can't do that. So once we have this image, I realized that the back wall needed to be mirrored. So I asked for it to do that. So it did it flawlessly, except for the reflection. As you can see, it reflected kind of another random wall. So then I said to change the back wall to be mirrored, but the mirror should reflect the outside view of gardens framed by matte black metal doors, which it was able to do. So I did get a very, very nice image here. I then wanted to play around with the flooring. So I asked it to change it to a herringbone timber finish. Again, did that flawlessly. You can see the reflections are very, very realistic. Then I wanted to add in a pale silk green rug. It did that. I decided I wanted to change that rug. So I tried it a few times. I even tried to make a little edit on my iPad and then upload that, but it really couldn't do it. So that was the response that I received. So in the end, I ended up going into again and just saying, can you make it a little bit smaller? And I asked it to then add a television above the wall into this original image. So again, a nice result. Then I had this image of a cabinet, and I asked it to just change the joinery that I had. So you can see here, it's very much a placeholder. I wanted to have the nice rounded curves of the joinery. So I found this image which showed a cabinet that was rounded, and I asked it to change. You can see it just added in this cabinet into the scene, not what I wanted. And again, I uploaded it. I decided maybe it was because I was in the same chat. So I uploaded these two images again and then gave a more detailed prompt. And you can see by actually giving a more detailed prompt, the result wasn't bad actually. I didn't really want this overhead cabinet, but it did it anyway. And you can see at the bottom, it still retained that very sort of boxy quality. So again, I tried it. So let's go into here, and I just said, set. Again, what I did was, instead of giving the whole image, considering I only wanted the curve, I took a screenshot of the corner detail, and you can see here it's sort of added in. You can see some of the details aren't quite right, but again, you know, it's not a bad result. So the other place that you can use Nano Banana is if you go into Google AI Studio, and it's slightly complicated with Google AI Studio. So in order to use Nano Banana Pro, you need to have a paid API, which can be a little bit problematic. It's pretty easy to set up. When you go into your playground, you'll see you've got to add, there'll be an instruction to add an API key, and you just need to follow that instruction. And if you have already got a Google account which is paid, you can just go in here and say get API key and just follow the instructions to actually link a paid API key, and then you can create Nano Banana images within Google AI Studio. So heading back to our image here, you can see I again added in the first image with the corner, and I asked it to do that, and actually quite liked the result of the image. It really stuck to it, but you can see the problem here. It's actually cut off part of the image. Now, if you go into the sidebar, you can see there are a few things that you can change. Now, as you might know, if you've worked with any kind of AI model, temperature is basically how strongly the model sticks to the instructions, to the prompt that you're giving it. So it recommends that you leave that at 1. So, but you can in fact change the aspect ratio. So you can see here, you have all these aspect ratios. I just kept it with 16:9. And I changed the resolution to 2K. You can go up to 4K. It will use, you can see up here, you've got these tokens. And because it's a paid account, it will actually use tokens every time you want to make a change. So I haven't tested it enough to go through all my tokens or even to tell you how many it uses. But again, you know, I think you can actually get quite a lot of results from that. So you can see there, what I did say, I want to change the shape, but I want to keep all the other materials the same, and I want to show the whole images from the window to the left to the cabinet on the right, and this is the result. And actually, this is actually a really great result. It is exactly what I was sort of looking for in terms of the cabinetry, and you can see it's sort of stuck with the where the furniture is, the existing materials, and so on. So what I was testing here was accuracy of material editing, whether it respects existing geometry, whether it distorts equipment, and whether it can match a reference style without hallucinating. And honestly, this is where Nano Banana Pro really shined. It kept the equipment exactly as drawn. It didn't warp the treadmill or the reformer. It applied the new materials in a way that actually feels architecturally believable. The kind of concept visual I would absolutely show a client in early design stages. This can help designers who want to create quick, beautiful concept variations without waiting for full renders. Again, what would normally take me hours of V-Ray and Photoshop for a full rendering pass took only a few minutes. So to wrap up, from my testing across both scenes, here's what Nano Banana Pro does well. Global lighting changes, replaces materials realistically, matches the style reference, keeps geometry intact, reads SketchUp exports correctly, upgrades empty spaces into believable concept images. So here's where it's not quite perfect yet. The extremely sharp details sometimes soften. Small objects can lose definition or be lost altogether. It can occasionally over-smooth surfaces. Fine joinery detail isn't accurate to examples. And essentially, you can't rely on it for construction level precision. But for concept design, early client meetings, and rapid visual exploration, it's good. Also, one thing to note is that Nano Banana Pro is available inside of Photoshop. So if you just click here, you can see in the models, it is here under Gemini 3. Just make sure that your Photoshop 2026 has been updated to the latest version. If you're an interior designer or architect and you've been waiting for an AI model that actually understands rooms, materials, lightings, and geometry, Nano Banana Pro is definitely worth testing. I'm going to keep experimenting with it, especially for mood boards, joinery variations, and quick render upgrades. So if you want to see more tests or a deeper tutorial, leave a comment. I'll also be uploading further tests to my community. So if you join, you'll be able to check it out there. And if you haven't yet started in Nano Banana, check out this video. You can see it up here. It will get you up and running in no time.